What is happening, everyone? We are at the top of the hour and we're diving in. Welcome to Free Up Your Time. Just a course that is going to take a half hour. So get you out of here at the bottom of the hour. And the way we're going to flow is I'm going to teach, and at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A button. So you can ask questions here, and as we're going through, ask questions and we'll answer them. And by we, I mean me and Brenda, who is the other half of We Embark. She's on, there she is. Hi, Brenda. And so Brenda and I will monitor questions. We'll answer them as we go through. And let's test out the Q&A. Click on the button and throw in there why you showed up today. What's one thing that you've been putting off that you want to start getting done? So throw that in the Q&A and we'll keep moving on through here. So the reason we're talking is because the problem that we have is that we're all overwhelmed. Not all of us, but we're overwhelmed. We're stressed. We find ourselves like worrying about what we have to do and kind of stressing out about forgetting stuff. And when we do this, when we're stressed, when we're worried about getting things done and not getting everything done, we start wasting energy. And that's the big thing we want to manage is our energy. Trying to remember things like, I got to send my mom a birthday card. I have to remember to email this person. Trying to remember that in our mind wastes energy. Deciding what to work on, if you're in the middle of the day and you have an extra 10 minutes and you go to your to-do list and you need to figure out what to do next, deciding in the moment takes energy. So all this worry, all this stress, the energy that we're wasting, our goal is to start conserving that energy and conserving that energy so we can use it on taking action on the things we want to take action on and creating the stuff that we want to create in our lives. And the best way we know how to move towards taking more action is by planning ahead. And that's the steps that we're going to teach today. You're going to create so much more when you plan your days, and you're going to get so much more done. And the coolest part is that you feel better. When you start planning, you get rid of that overwhelm, you get rid of that worry and stress, and you start being able to be present with where you are. And present with where you are, calm, clear-headed. So today, we are going to teach you 4 steps. And let's see. We got people here to network more professionally while also having time for my young family. Yes, keeping positive energy at home when we're feeling spent. Like, yes, that's exactly why we're here. Just pulling this up. Share my screen. Yeah, so you guys that are throwing those things up that you want to work on and what you're showing up for, keep it in mind. How is it going to apply to you? Because that is the goal, to have more presence, have more energy, and get things done that we want to get done. So 4 steps we're going to teach today. Number 1 is the weekly goal. Number 2 is the clean out. 3, the daily prep. And 4 is the commitment. So these are the 4 steps. Before we dive into these, there's 2 tools that we want to offer. And one of the tools is turning off all your notifications, disabling notifications. And that goes for the blings on your phone, the pop-ups on your computer screen. Those, we're talking about energy here and conserving it. The notifications waste your energy. They take your attention away from what you're focused on. And that quick eyes shift down to a pop-up of your email, back up to what you're working on, that is taking energy away. It takes time to focus and refocus. So that's tool number one. Figure out how to disable all the dings and pop-ups, notifications off. Tool number two is start to utilize a mobile intake list. And the list that Brenda and I use, it's called To Do. It's Microsoft's app, To Do. And it's a mobile app, and then you can also get it on your computer. And this acts as your net. Everything that you think about doing, everything that you need to remember comes into your head and onto the net. Like, this mobile intake list is going to capture, I have to send my mom a birthday card. It comes in my head. I'm not going to remember it. I'm going to put it on my mobile intake list. Pick up broccoli at the grocery store, goes onto the mobile intake list. So the reason we do that is because our brains aren't created to remember. Our brains aren't meant to remember. That's not their function. They don't store information. Our brains think, our brains ideate, our brains create, and remembering is not what they do. So we're going to rely on a intake list, a mobile intake list, to get that done. So those are the two tools: turning off your notifications and starting to use a mobile intake list. Now we are going to go into step one. Step one is the weekly goal. So weekly goal is going to be one result that you want to achieve that week. And ideally, this result is something that's going to lead towards your long-term aspirations, your long-term well-being, your long-term goals. So, networking more professionally, if that's what you're working on, how are you going, what's the one thing you want to do this week to network more? And the reason that we prioritize this is why it's step one, is because oftentimes the stuff that's going to create the life that we want gets thrown to the back burner first. And if you're in a corporate environment, any time that you don't have scheduled and is left open gets sucked away by something else. Another project that maybe you didn't need to have to commit to, a meeting that you got sucked into, just office banter. We claim this time right away for ourselves so it doesn't get sucked away. If you're an entrepreneur and every week you could pick 10 different things to accomplish, a new marketing effort, sales, learning more information, in the weekly goal, we're going to limit it to one thing. So for example, like Brenda and I, we're going to look at Brenda's calendar. So Brenda had on her schedule to get this workshop done. And this is what it would look like on your calendar. So you start with the end goal, right? Here's your end goal, and then you work backwards, and you're claiming this time first. All the steps that need to happen are on your calendar. And what this is going to do is it's going to conserve more energy, because you don't have to have this workshop that you're hosting hanging over your head, because you've scheduled it all out. All I have to do, the time's there, it's on my calendar. Now I just have to follow my calendar. And the time wasted worrying about it is gone. The energy is all put to the task at hand. So that's step one, your weekly goal. And one note I'll throw out there about it is, can it always be your long-term well-being, a personal goal? No, but if it's a work goal, like a presentation to your CFO or something like that, then that becomes your goal of the week, and you focus on it and you build out the timeline into it. So that's step one. Step two, the clean out. And before we go to step two, Brenda, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's great. I just would mention
You're
that...
on mute, I think, Brenda. No?
Unmuted? Okay.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Okay.
Go on, what were you saying?
You got me now? Yeah, so all I would mention on that weekly goal is what he showed. That was like 5 or 6 hours of our time. It doesn't have to be that big. It can be 1 hour, something that you get to the end of the week and think, yeah, I feel awesome if I accomplish that this week. So find your balance that's going to support your bigger long-term goal.
Yeah. And for some reason, I can't hear you, but I think everyone else can because I haven't seen any Q&A. So if I don't respond to what you were saying, that's why. All right. So step 2, the clean out. We are going to go back to the mobile intake list. And let's see. Got any comments? Everyone else could hear you, Brenda, so you're good. Mobile intake list. So we go back to our mobile intake list that I mentioned at the beginning of one of those tips, and that's what we're cleaning out. So you look at this list that's been catching all the things that you're going to have to do, and you prioritize it. That's the first thing. You move to the top everything that needs to get done this week. And then once it's prioritized, you take the task and put it onto your calendar. And when you put it onto your calendar, it's as good as done. You know if it's on your calendar, that task is going to happen, so you check it off the list. And one thing that comes up are big projects. For example, like on my list right now is putting a fence up in the backyard. And that's not a task that's going to get done in an hour. So what I'll do is I'll put the next step, the immediate next step off of the list onto my calendar. So call 3 contractors and get quotes. Like that's the immediate next step. And the reason we prioritize our intake list and we start putting that stuff on the calendar is because we're making decisions ahead of time and we're avoiding that decision fatigue in the moment. And that's what we're talking about, right? Conserving energy. So if we just left our intake list unprioritized in our phone, and then we found ourselves having a half hour on Thursday afternoon to get stuff done, we're trying to decide what to get done, and we waste that energy in our brain. Our brain's making decisions in the moment instead of ahead of time. Going to move on. Step 3. So step 3 is the daily prep. So we've done the weekly goal, we've done the clean out, and now we're doing the daily prep. Monday morning, or Monday afternoon, this is when your daily prep happens for Tuesday. So before you shut down for the day, you're going to take 15 minutes and prep for the following day. And this is how it looks. The first thing you schedule is your sleep, your meals when you're eating, your exercise, any daily habits you have or habits you're starting to create. You schedule that first. And it's a little against a lot of our norms in society to prioritize ourselves. A lot of the times we put family first, we put work first, and that leads to burnout and stress because we're not taking care of ourselves. So we schedule this daily time for ourselves because it goes back to the energy. It's going to create more energy in us. We're going to take care of our well-being, and then we show up as better husbands, brothers, sons, daughters, sisters, wives, whatever it is. When we take care of ourselves, we show up better for the people in our lives. And we also show up better at our jobs for our employer. So that's step 1 of the daily prep. You schedule all your stuff. Step 2 is you schedule family time. And now this schedule is not just 9 to 5 between your working hours. It's outside of working hours. When I see on my schedule at 6 to 7 p.m., I'm hanging out with Brenda and Nell. We're having dinner and going outside, whatever it is. I can look at my calendar during the day and know that's there. So by that time, I'm focused on them. I'm not worrying about what happens next. I'm not checking email. I have that time ready to be present. So that time's scheduled, because maybe there's other house projects I need to get done that night, but I know from 6 to 7, I'm with family. Then we confirm meetings, obligations, kind of the things that we are already committed to. And then finally, we block off time for email. So email is taken care of only in these times that we set for it. We don't check email outside of that. And a lot of the time, email will create more tasks. And in that case, what we're going to do, kind of like the rule that we have at We Embark, is that if it's 3 minutes, if it's going to take 3 minutes or less, the reply to the email, do it now. If it's going to take 3 minutes or more, schedule it for later. And that's how you're going to work through your emails. And here's what it looks like on a calendar. So you start out, what's already on there is your weekly goal, and then it starts to fill in. Just like this, boom, 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 boom. And by the end of it, by the end of the daily prep, everything's on your calendar, no blank times, everything is spoken for, and your day is fully booked. And you leave the office that Monday after fully booking your Tuesday, and you feel good. You don't worry that a ball's going to be dropped. You don't worry that you need to remember something, because everything's planned out and you just need to follow your calendar. All right, so that's step 3. Any questions, throw them in the Q&A. Brenda, we all good?
Yeah, all good. And I'll just say, if anyone's budgeters, it's sort of that concept of every dollar is spoken for. The same idea. Every minute is spoken for, and then it gets spent in the best way possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like every minute is allocated for. Yeah, awesome. And when you do that, you don't waste it. Like that's the thing with budgeting. If you don't have the dollar allocated for something, it ends up being wasted somewhere else. Step 4, the commitment. Okay, step 4 is the commitment. And this is your calendar, right? You've made the plan. Now all you have to do is stick to it. Don't waver. Commit to your appointments like it was a meeting with your boss, with your CEO, with the senior manager, the director, whatever it is. Like that's how you're going to commit to your calendar. And this is where a lot of like coaching comes in. I for example, I have this client, Greg, and his name's not actually Greg, but I like to call most of my clients Greg when I'm telling them the story. So here's another story about Greg. He is doing all this planning. Like we're working on this planning because he wants to create more time in his day to focus on himself, maybe end up taking longer weekends, and just like you guys put in the Q&A, be present with his family when he goes home and not worrying about getting back on email or what's going to happen at the office the next day. So Greg and I are working on all this stuff, but he's having a hard time following his calendar. He plans it all out, but something always comes up. There's always a fire to be put out. And that was that's the reason why he's not honoring his calendar. And an example is like he's a contractor and material was left at a site that was supposed to be cleared out. And he believes that this is a fire that he has to go put out and right away. So he drops everything, decides to break that commitment to his calendar that he had. And we dive into it, and this incident, the material was left there that he thinks is a fire. It's someone else's responsibility. It's one of his like manager's responsibilities, and he's actually putting out other people's fires. He's worried that the concrete guy is going to be delayed and then the project might be delayed. He's worried about other people's time and not honoring his time. And that's what happens a lot with our calendars is we put other people in front of us. It's kind of like what we were talking about before. We prioritize family, we prioritize work, and he's always done it that way. And things that seem like a fire, there's, you know, his brain is conditioned to just dive on it right away instead of looking at other options. So this is like when we're committing to our calendar, we're going to come across objections from our brain and objections that we're kind of been conditioned to not say no to other people. So we have to get a little more comfortable with saying no. And that's step 4 is the commitment. And Brenda, what do you got?
Yeah, I want to add that's a very selfless reason we don't honor our calendar. Sometimes it's a little bit more like you don't feel like it. Like when you commit at 2 p.m. tomorrow that you're going to start working on that project that you've been putting off for 2.5 years, you can almost guarantee your brain is going to come up with more important things to do or something that sounds like it's a better use of your time. So again, that's where our commitment ahead of time will really come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not going to feel comfortable because this is new and we're not used to practicing it. It's going to feel uncomfortable and strange and unfamiliar, but we're trying something new. We're creating new habits. And whenever we try to change, it's always a little bit uncomfortable. So these are our 4 steps: the weekly goal, the clean out, the daily prep, the commitment. And that's everything we have for you guys today. Appreciate you guys joining us. I have a few more minutes if there's any questions. And if not, I just want you guys all to start planning and have an awesome day. Brenda, you got anything?
Well, I'll add, I'm curious if anybody's thinking like, no way, I'm never going to do that. Tim asked if this will be emailed. Yeah, Tim, no worries. We can absolutely email that. But I wanted to speak to that. If anybody's saying this is too much, too tedious, that that was absolutely me. A year or 2 ago when we adapted this, and I was very much in I valued spontaneity and I need to keep things free and loose, and this is how my creativity flows, and I need to daydream. And I was afraid I'd feel restricted. And this is actually very freeing because, like Tommy keeps speaking to, the energy conservation, you don't have to, your calendar tells you what to do, and you have more brain power left for your actual work and your projects. And I still daydream, I just schedule time for that. And I'll also add one more objection because I was reluctant to adapt to this, is that I kept saying, I don't know how long my project will take. And so I just decided to try and guess how long it would take. And it's amazing when you set that deadline for your brain, it really works toward hitting it. So like, think of all the times that you had a crazy deadline to hit and you somehow magically hit it. And it's because we had that end goal in sight. And there's no time for dilly-dally, you just have to get to work. And your productivity actually goes up because you're working towards that. And there are times that I over or underestimate it. And if I underestimate, then I just schedule the remainder of the project for another time. If I overestimate it, then you get time back in your day. So, any questions out there? Anybody thinking, no way?
No way, this is not for me. This is not how I roll. That was kind of me. And Brenda, you were like that. I value my spontaneity. This would be too restrictive for me. My objection to before I started doing this was like, this is way too type A. I'm not a planner like this. And once I started doing it, like now that I do it, it's the reason that I can get so much done. It's the reason that like the things that we do for this business continue to grow. And try it. And if you guys are having a hard time, like set up an intro session, because this is what we talk about. This is what I love to help people with. And yeah, look forward to hearing how it goes for everybody. Let's see, we do have a question. Will this be emailed to us? How do you handle social media messages, comments, if you use it as part of your job? Do you treat them like emails and set up a time to respond? Yeah, awesome question. And I would, to the first question, no, this stuff is not going to be emailed out. Second question, yes, schedule it for just like you would schedule time for email. I think that's huge with social media. It can be a distraction. And when we plan ahead and only go to it then, that's when we get the most use out of it as a productivity tool and as a tool to really market for our business.
And Tommy, another question about an actual fire drill, how you handle that lost time. Do you reschedule it, move it around? And I would say that, yes, that's what I do. If we get a call from daycare that we need to pick up our kid, then the calendar goes to crap. And so, but I know what I lost is the nice thing. And I know exactly what needs to be rescheduled. And maybe I have to work late the next night or fit it in some way, somehow. But you have a very clear idea of the detriment.
Yeah, awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for being here, and get after it, plan, get out of overwhelm, start feeling present, and enjoy creating a lot of cool stuff.
Thank you, everyone, for signing on.